Hi, everyone. I'm Matthew DeSantis,
And I'm Kaylie Shapiro.
and welcome to the NYRA Bets Road to the Kentucky Derby.
And the Kentucky Oaks.
Well, hey there, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Road to the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks with myself and Kaylie Shapiro here on NYRA Bets YouTube. Now, before we get into all of the good stuff we're going to be talking about this week, big weekend at Turfway Park and at Oaklawn Park, I want to remind you to press that like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is entirely free of cost. We have race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, and so much more. By subscribing, it's simply going to be opting in to be notified when new videos are dropping on the channel. We have Saudi Cup previews. We have shows like this. We have the Win Play Show, weekly programming talking about horse racing and handicapping. And then we're also going to have Cap in the Card for Oaklawn Park on Sunday, which we're going to get into that little asterisk here in a second. But Kaylie, these videos have really taken off here on the YouTube channel, and we decided, hey, you know what's better than one? Two. So moving forward, we're going to do a recap video kind of right after these races are done, that Sunday, Monday, and then we'll come back later in the week and do a preview. But it's really heating up and a lot of great racing ahead of us this week.
Super, super excited for this week. I mean, I don't think I've had as much fun as I had last night looking at the Honeybee as I've had in a while. So I think that it's a really great race. And obviously, the Rebel came up really strong as well. So, going to be a great weekend of racing. And we also saw some disappointing and some good performances last week as well, maybe some surprising. So, I'm excited to see what
Yeah.
happens this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're not going to really share our top 10 list because it's something we're going to start doing. So next week, you can tune in on Monday. We'll have a new video recapping what we saw on Sunday at Oaklawn, as well as what we saw on Saturday at Turfway Park. And so doing those, and that's where we'll share our new top 10 and our own personal rankings. But obviously, that Risen Star Magnitude running a huge race, but then immediately being taken off the Triple Crown Trail with a slight ankle bone chip. So something just to keep in mind there. And then on the female side, in the fillies, you saw a Good Cheer get the win as expected over a very scratch depleted 4-horse field. So she looked good, but maybe not as much to take out of that race as you might otherwise. But like I said, we're going to be coming back after the Rebel, after the Honeybee, after the races at Turfway Park with the new top 10 on Monday. So definitely want to make sure to tune back in and check that out. And then, like I said, we'll be back later in the week with previews of the following week's Oaks and Derby prep races. But Kaylie, let's talk about this new listing and standings that we have here with the Oaks. And I'll start with you on the Oak side. Good Cheer goes up to the top now as your point leader, pretty much so guaranteed a spot in the starting gate of the Kentucky Oaks, now 45 points. She did only earn 25 points for that victory because it was a scratch depleted field of only 4 horses. So while it was technically a 50-point prep, those points get cut in half when you have less than 5 horses in the field. So she's, though, the leader in the clubhouse right now. I know she really impressed you in that effort.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little disappointed, obviously, after a couple scratches, and I was a little nervous as well because, the pace dynamics really did not set up for her whatsoever after those scratches. Not like they did particularly before, but I still thought she was going to win. But, the short field, I got a little bit more nervous. She got boxed in on the rail. They really tried boxing her in there, and,
They did.
once she got out and she made her run, she won easily so I was pretty impressed by that. And I mean, the top 2 of the points leaders is the same as my top 2 on my Oaks list now. I put her on top. I thought that I got more out of what she showed on Saturday than what
Yeah.
Tenma showed out in California in that, I think, 3-horse field. So I think Good Cheer overcame a bit more. And also, I didn't pay attention to her too much in the past in the paddock, but it really stuck out to me when I was watching on Saturday just how much of a competitor she is. Like, she's really looking at every single thing in person in the paddock. She has this serious look on her face. She's a competitor. I really, really like her. So I'm very happy that, it's pretty likely she'll be running in the Oaks. So.
Absolutely. And on the boys' side, not a lot of change. The one big change was you did see Getaway Car get those 20 points by winning a really thrilling stretch duel with Caldera out in the Sunland Derby. And now you have Bob Baffert sitting at first and second with his horses as the top two Kentucky Derby point leaders, with Citizen Bull with 60, Getaway Car with 36. You really only need maybe another, you might not even need any more points, quite frankly, to get into the starting gate. 36 sometimes is enough, depending on who decides to go, who decides to scratch out of the race, things like that. But I mean, really, you only probably need another 10 points to really feel secure at that point if you're Getaway Car to get into the starting gate, built coming off a third place effort in that Risen Star, earning a lot of points. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of fluctuation this week because we have quite a few races coming up. We have 2 on the boys, 2 on the girls' side. Now, here's the thing to remember. Oaklawn is experiencing a lot of winter weather, so they made a lot of shifts to their racing calendar. Friday moved to Saturday, Saturday moved to Sunday, Sunday moved to Monday. So basically, everything got pushed back a day. And as a result, the Rebel Stakes Day card, which features the Rebel and the Honeybee, will be run on Sunday, February 23rd, okay? Not the originally scheduled Saturday, so just keep that in mind. Those are obviously the 2 Derby and Oaks prep races at Oaklawn. Now, Turfway Park also has a pair of prep races. The Cincinnati Trophy for the fillies is actually on Friday night, so you want to tune in late on Friday. They've had to actually cancel their Wednesday card, or they moved their Wednesday card to Sunday and canceled their Thursday card because of weather. All is good for Friday, though, so that's when that race will be run. The John Battaglia Memorial will be run on Saturday for the boys and the Derby prep. So 4 overall races. Like I said earlier, Kaylie and I'll be back on Monday to share with you our recap of those races, share our thoughts, and then we'll be back later in the week to talk about the following week's prep races out in California. But let's dive into the race that kept you up very late last night, apparently, which is the Honeybee. And this is a grade 3 going a mile and a 16th for 3-year-old fillies on the dirt. It's a field of 13. Your overwhelming morning line favorite is Muhimma, the number 1 for trainer Brad Cox. We saw this horse up close and personal in New York, but there's a lot of names on this list that I know you like quite a bit. And so I'm interested in how you looked at this race when you really dove into it, because this is a really nice field, I think.
I completely agree. I mean, obviously, my first instinct was to try to find a way around Muhimma, and I was happy to see that there's a lot of speed in this race. And I think that this horse is going to face a lot more pressure than she's faced in the past. I mean, I know that she got a mile and an eighth. She went gate to wire in the Demoiselle Aqueduct, but she didn't face any pressure there. She did it pretty easily, and I think that this time around, she's just not going to get the same trip. And I know that she had to break from the 1 hole that day, and she did it well, but she has to do it again on Sunday. And it's not really a given that she's going to break cleanly. There's just I have a ton of questions about this horse that I know is the best filly in here, but I know is not someone that I'd want to bet at even money or less than even money. So yeah, I definitely found somewhere else to look with some closers. Saw a lot of speed in this race. There's a horse from California coming out here, the number 9 Look Forward, that has a ton of speed. So I think that she's going to be in a little deeper than she has been in the past.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Listen, you could look at a horse like 5G on the far outside. That horse has good speed. You could look even like Anonyma, has decent speed, probably not leading type of speed, but has good speed. To your point, Look Forward, very good horse for Michael McCarthy, has good speed, finished second at Tenma 2 back, and definitely has the speed to get up front and is going to go forward. Gunite Max is a horse that's cross-entered, so we'll see if that one ends up running, but that's a horse that showed some good speed before. Take Charge Milady has decent early speed. Classic Appeals, a horse that won gate to wire last time out. So yeah, you go through, there's a fair amount of speed. And then Muhimma on that inside rail, Florent drew up. And I think what makes it more complicated is we've not really seen any horses run back from that Demoiselle. The top 4 finishers have not run back. So it's hard to go, oh, that race has really come back strong, or that race has really come back weak, one way or the other. So it is a little bit of a guessing game on a horse that, like you said, is probably going to be even odds or lower potentially come post time. And in a 13 horse field where a lot of things could happen, I don't know. That is something where she's not going to get an easy lead if she gets it at all. And so I think that makes more than enough sense for you to go with a horse coming from off the pace. And we both tried to beat her in this race. And I'll just put our picks up here on the bottom for folks to look at. But you ultimately went to a Tom Amos filly who's coming back from what was, I think, a pretty sneaky good Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies effort.
Yeah, I thought that Quickick ran a really good race in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I mean, she broke slow. She was trailing about 3 lengths off the rest of the field. And then she passed a lot of horses coming around the second turn. She came very wide, I think like 4 wide down the stretch to get up for third. So I thought that she ran really well there. I mean, Immersive and Vaca with the twist finished ahead of her. And I mean, it's not a negative to see that Lacara, who finished, I think, fifth there, won 2 weeks ago. So, I mean, I thought that flattered that performance as well. And she was also a 2-year-old shipping out to California for the first time. It's pretty notable. She only lost by 6 lengths to 2 really good fillies. And then Scottish Lassie, who finished fourth, was over 9 lengths ahead of the rest of the field as well. So those were your main performers in there. And now she's coming back as a 3-year-old. And I understand that, it's off a layoff, but Tom Amos, has success getting horses ready off a layoff in the past. He had set 26% win rate off similar layoffs over the last 5 years. And I think it's positive to see that Dylan Davis stays with this one as well. And this is a horse that has a ton of late kick, in a race that's jam-packed with speed. And I mean, 12-1 on the morning line was really hard to resist as well.
I agree. I mean, I think she's a horse. She'll probably go down a little bit in price, but even going down in price, she still presents, I think, good value relative to her chances of potentially winning this race at something like 8-1 come post time. And yeah, you like seeing Dylan staying aboard. And the other thing to point out, all these horses coming from off the pace. One of the things people who watch Oaklawn Park, one thing that Oaklawn middle move, that ability to get into a good position going around the far turn is so critical. And so to have her have already shown that ability to pass horses around the turn, I think is really key. So definitely a horse that I like quite a bit, is also in my top 3, or my top 4, I should say, as well. I think she can run a really big race here for Tom, coming off this sired by McKinsey. My top pick, listen, I don't know if I'm trolling you with this top pick. I don't know if I'm baiting you. I don't know if I'm chancing fate with it or whatnot, but I ultimately went to a filly that you have loved so much in the past, which is Quietside at 8-1. And my logic is, this is a horse you and I both have liked quite a bit. We saw up in Saratoga, and we both thought this was a really talented filly as a 2-year-old. And for whatever reason or another, she just has not been the winning type. She runs her race every single time. She never runs poorly. She's never finished worse than third. So she's super talented. I think she hasn't always gotten the best rides. I think there's been issues where she's had bad trips before. And now she gets Jose Ortiz up on the mount for trainer John Ortiz. She just fired off a massive bullet leading up to this race, 58-4 in 5 furlongs. 8-1. I know she's got to overcome the far 12 post and kind of make over and not get caught wide going around both turns. But I think she's really talented, and this is the type of horse I like to bet, who has lost at shorter odds in the past, and now you're finally getting a good price on her, and probably an honest price on her, and now this is the time I really want to cash.
I completely do not blame you. I mean, my first instinct was to put this horse on top. As soon as I looked at the race, I started diving a little deeper into it and ended up landing on Quickick. But I mean, Quietside is 100% a win candidate here, and she's going to have a lot more pace to run at on Sunday as well, which she hasn't really gotten in the past. And like you said, she's been given some poor rides, especially last time out. She just never really got comfortable or looked comfortable once throughout the race. So she gets a hot jockey up as well. Bullet work coming in. I completely agree with you. Putting her up top here, and that's why I have her third. I mean, we know that she's most likely not going to finish off the board. She never has. So
Right.
that's a pretty safe option in your top four. She's really never run a bad race. And I think that the dynamic should set up nicely for her.
I agree. Now, listen, we both have Muhimma sitting second, and she's just really a tough filly to get around because she is the class of the field. When you look at just the speed figures, you look at her just overall pedigree, her talent, the connections. Brad Cox has so many good fillies. Obviously, we saw Immersive, who sadly is off the Oaks Trail, but was the champion 2-year-old. She'll be back later this summer. We saw Good Cheer last weekend, who just, I thought, looked incredibly impressive. I agree with you. She just looks so good in a 4-horse race, if that's possible. And now you got Muhimma, who a lot of people thought might be the most naturally talented of the three, actually. One of the things you've pointed out to me, though, before, Kaylie, is she is a big filly. And, breaking from that inside rail, needing to show a lot of speed, it reminds me a little bit of a former Brad Cox horse, Idiomatic, who was, again, a big filly who sometimes took some time to fill into her body and kind of get used to running a certain way. So, listen, she's going to be tough to beat, and that's why we're both going to try to beat her. But she's clearly the class of the field.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, she's a really, really big filly. Obviously, if she breaks and all's well, then she's good. I mean, she's going to face pressure after that, I would assume. So that's why I don't have her up top. Like I said, I think it's going to be a completely different scenario. But I mean, just the fact that she is so big, I do really wonder, if she faces any adversity throughout the race or has to rate a little, really how much it takes to get a horse of that size going again. I mean, she looks like a colt. Like, she's huge. And obviously, it's a good thing. She's very physically impressive. But I mean, she's a big, clunky type of horse that I just don't, I want to see her rate and face pressure, before I take her at a short price. But yeah, she's definitely the class of the field. And she's really tough to get around. And that's why we both have her second here. But yeah, I think that this is a wide open betting race. So it's a good opportunity to look elsewhere.
Oh, I agree. And I think it'll be interesting to see. One of the things to remember from that Demoiselle, now granted it was going 9 furlongs, so you got to take that into consideration. But remember, Ballerina Doro was closing in that race and was making up a lot of ground late. Now, I think that speaks to her ability. I really like that filly. I know you do too. And that was with very little pace for Ballerina Doro to run into. So you get some other talented horses like a Quickick, like a Quietside, who can come from off the pace. You can make up ground potentially on Muhimma coming for home, especially if she's been softened up on the front end by some of these other horses. I'll just quickly say 5G is a horse that I have kind of a little further down, third on mine. This is a horse that's 4-1. I'll be interested if she actually goes off of 4-1. It wouldn't surprise me if she jumps up a little bit, just because of, I think, some of the bigger names and connections in the field. But, she's one who won the cash run last time out by 9 lengths. What was impressive is the second place horse that day, Paradise City, came back to win a pretty nice optional claimer by 6 lengths on her own next time out. So beat a decent horse in that field. For George Weaver, Irad Ortiz up on the mount. Again, it's going to have to work out something from that far outside post. Doesn't give you a ton of value, but I'm hoping maybe that one floats up a little bit. You went with the Kenny McPeek horse, who looked incredibly good last time out, and Take Charge Milady as one of your top 4.
Yeah, and it looks like this horse is, continuing to improve. She looked really good in the Martha Washington. I mean, she finished second to this Nanima horse, the other Kenny McPeek horse in here, in her second career start. And then, she broke her maiden next time out at Oaklawn Park. That was her first time there. So that was something I noticed. And then 2 runners in that maiden race came back to win their next time out. One improved their speed figure by 29 points. So yeah, and she also came pretty wide in the Martha Washington to put away Quietside as well. And I think after putting, 2 back-to-back wins over this track and a horse that's continuing to improve, you got to figure she's, one of the main players in here as well.
Yeah, she's also a horse that's a little bit of a stat buster. And I like horses like that kind of goes against trainer trends. And that is Kenny McPeek switching 3-year-olds off Lasix usually is not good. And yet here we saw Kenny switch this horse off Lasix. She comes back, runs like a hole in the wind in that Martha Washington. So I like seeing horses like that. There was a horse a couple of years ago, Red Carpet Ready. I remember Rusty Arnold, the trainer, was something like 0 for 49 coming off the layoff. This horse came off the layoff, ran like a hole in the wind. You make note of horses like that because you go, they can run against certain trends that you might see from trainers. And so certainly Take Charge, Milady, definitely one that you got to take pretty seriously. Also, shout out to one of my former students, Milady Jean. Her actual first name was Milady, spelled exactly the same way. So Milady was a good student in my American government class at Guilford Tech. So I just, sometimes you have students with unique names and it just sticks in your head, and she was one of them. So when I see this horse, I always think about her because of that name. So kind of, a cool race, though. Going to be a lot of fun, but one of only 2 prep races on the card at Oaklawn on Saturday, as we also have the Grade 2 Rebel coming up with a field of 14. And you know how loaded this field is when your morning line favorite is 4-1. That is the number 3, Sandman. And this is another really good field. I'm not going to try to build the suspense. You and I both put Sandman as our top selection in this race. And, it's hard for me to take chalk when it's 4-1 on the morning line. Now, I think this horse gets bet down quite a bit. But this horse had an abysmal start last time out and is the ultimate kind of trip horse in some ways that you go, the trip was bad. Now it's going to come back, run really well here. I think this race kind of sets up pretty well for this horse. I think there's a lot of talent here and ultimately went with Sandman. But I will say the number 13, Tiztastic, is a horse I look forward to talking a little bit more about. But I want to let you talk a little bit about a horse that, to give you a lot of credit, you have been high on going back to this horse's 2-year-old campaign at Churchill Downs.
Yeah, and I always thought that, he was a horse that maybe it would take a couple of starts, and experience to put the pieces together, and it looks like that's the way that he's going. I mean, what a horrible, horrible start that he had in the Southwest. And I mean, how tough he ran after that was so impressive to me. Like, my jaw was dropped. He broke horribly, and he ran a very impressive race given the circumstances. And he also, besides the break, he was, battling with Patch Adams, I think, down the stretch a lot. So he faced a lot of adversity there, and he nearly got up. And I think that obviously if he hadn't broken like that, he would have definitely caught Speed King. So I was very impressed by that and knew I definitely wanted to take him out of that race next time out. And like you said, the pace scenario in here, the fast pace, this horse has, it sets up perfectly for a horse like Sandman to come from off the pace in here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it just sets up really nicely because a horse like the number 1 Innovator is going to go for Dwayne Lucas. Smokin' Wicked for Dallas Stewart is a horse that has a ton of speed and is more of a sprinter stretching out. You look at a horse even like, obviously, Speed King, the name says it all, but this is a horse that went gate to wire, winning the Southwest. And so those 3 alone are going to make sure that there is a pretty significant early pace presence. And again, I just think it sets up nicely for Sandman, who's more of a mid-pack horse. And so as long as he gets out and gets to his position, probably on the rail somewhere, sitting mid-pack in this large field, I think he's got more than enough turning for home. Now, another horse coming out of that same race is the number 13, Tiztastic, for trainer Steve Asmussen. And this is one who also kind of had a little bit of a tough trip, had to deal with some traffic, was in some tight spots, had to travel wide. Wasn't the easiest trip that day for this horse. And this is one, again, who's really not run many bad races. I mean, actually 2 starts on the turf, both victories, including a stakes win at Kentucky Downs. And then this horse went on the Derby Trail and has finished second in the Street Sense to Sovereignty, who you and I both have a pretty high opinion of. Kentucky Jockey Club finished 3rd that day to First Resort and Jonathan's Way, both very good horses, one of which we'll talk about here in a minute, who's running at Turfway Park this weekend. And then in the Southwest, finishing 3rd again to Speed King and Sandman, despite having, I think, again, a little bit of a trouble in that trip. Now we're getting quite the jockey upgrade. And I don't mean that to be any disrespect to Keith Asmussen, but I think it's notable that his dad tapped him on the shoulder and said, Keith, I want you to take a back seat. Jose, you're up on the mount. And so Jose Ortiz is taking over for Asmussen on this ride. I think that's pretty significant. You see the same thing on Publisher, another Steve Asmussen horse, Eric Asmussen off of that one, Flavian Pratt up. So, now that we're getting into the late in the Derby season, you're starting to see Steve give some of these mounts to more seasoned and professional jockeys who are experienced in these spots. And so I think getting Jose up is a really big upgrade here. And again, no disrespect to Keith, but it just, Jose's danced a lot of dances. He's been in these races. He knows how to handle these types of horses. So I just think that one at 8-1 on the morning line presents really good value. But you like another one. You like Bullard coming in from California, and I don't blame you. It's a nice horse from Michael McCarthy.
Yeah, and Michael McCarthy has only really brought 10 horses, that I found over to Oaklawn over the last 5 years, 3 for 13 with them. And I know it's a small sample size, but graded stakes at Oaklawn, he's 2 for 6. So clearly he spots them well, and he's shipping this horse across the country for this. So I think this horse has a really good shot. And he's also, not done anything wrong whatsoever. Last time out in the San Vicente, he was battling with a Baffert duo, and the odds weren't really in his favor there. He came pretty wide around the turn and was just kind of passed by Romanesque, who, got a nice trip there. And then in the Bob Hope, he was 6 lengths off the lead, and had plenty of pace to close into there. So I think that he should have a similar setup here, and, can maybe sit a really nice trip. And he's another horse that, swallows horses around the turn as well, which is, a good thing to have at Oaklawn. So I think that he looked pretty good coming in here, and he's a nice price on the morning line as well. I think that's a pretty fair price to get on him.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, he's a gun runner who was a $675,000 sale. This will be his first attempt going 2 turns. His previous starts have been 6 furlongs and then 2 7-furlong races. But like you said, listen, he finished 3rd in the San Vicente against Barnes, who's my number 1 Kentucky Derby hopeful. So, listen, losing to a horse like that, there's no disrespect there. That's perfectly understandable. The 2-turn test is going to be one we'll just have to wait and see. Obviously, the gun runner influence and certainly the sales price indicates this horse has very big expectations. They know this is a 2-turn horse, and so we'll just have to see what sort of trip he can work out from that 10 post. But like he has good enough speed where he can put himself into the contention and at least that mid-pack trip early. And then, like you said, has plenty of ability to make that move late and hopefully track some horses down. I ultimately also included a horse that is also coming in from California, but I'll talk about him in a second. I actually want to talk about Cole Battle because you and I both have Cole Battle in our top 4. And that is a horse I really like a lot, and I think is being overlooked and quite frankly disrespected a little bit on the morning line at 10-1, because this is a horse. I know the speed figure in the Smarty Jones wasn't huge in 84, but the race before that, he put away a horse like Speed King coming from well off the pace. Speed King is now your 6-1, like basically 3rd choice or 4th choice, I guess, on the board. Cole Battle, this horse has never lost on the dirt. Has never done anything wrong, and more importantly, has shown he can win up front and he can win coming from off the pace. I love that sort of versatility, breaking from the inside rail. I love that Lonnie Briley is sticking with the jockey. We're not doing anything else. We're staying together here. I think 10-1 on a horse that has proven to be a winner on this track and has proven to have a versatility and has never lost on this surface. I don't know. I know he's going to have to get a little bit faster, but I think he's going to be able to do it. He's had a nice little layoff since that Smarty Jones. And I would tell people, do not be thrown off by how slow some of his works look. Remember that leading up to the Smarty Jones, he registered a 106-4 5-furlong work and then went out and blitzed the field in the Smarty Jones. He's got plenty of speed when he needs it. And this is a really nice horse.
Yeah, and that's why, I put him forth for all those reasons that you just said. He's a super versatile type of horse. So whatever situation he gets into here, whether he's forwardly placed or, just kind of tracks, I think that, he has a good shot to take a piece just based on his versatility. And like you said, has never done anything wrong. He's a perfect 4 for 4. And then along with the fact that, he's breaking from the 1 hole, which, isn't really a huge concern. He has enough speed to get out of there. So hopefully he can find himself in a comfortable position to sit a nice trip. But yeah, I definitely thought 10-1 was pretty generous on him on the morning line as well.
Yeah, and listen, then the final horse we'll talk about, who we both also have in our top four, is the number 5 Madaket Road. You have him third, I have him fourth. For trainer Bob Baffert, this one lost to Bullard in a couple of races back, but is a little bit more tested going 2 turns, but finished a distant third behind Citizen Bull and Rodriguez in that Robert B. Lewis. Though those two are again very serious horses, so it's hard to really discount that third place effort by saying, "Oh, he didn't run well." He just went up against better horses in the barn. But this is a horse that, listen, Irad Ortiz is up, and Irad rides for Baffert from time to time. You do see that combination. I don't know, 9-2 on a horse that maybe floats up a little bit. It could be interesting for this one. I know you, like I said, have him third in your top 4.
Yeah, and he's another one that's, going to be going 2 turns for the first time. But, the horse has really good early speed, and Irad Ortiz jumps aboard for the first time as well, like you said. And, Bob Baffert knows how to spot horses and bring them over to Oaklawn and has tons of success doing that. So this one's, I would find it hard to believe that this one's not going to at least hit the board, and curious to see what price maybe he floats up to. But yeah, I definitely think that this horse is pretty talented and probably well spotted coming in here as well. And the dynamics could also set up for a horse like this as well.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And what's interesting is, if you think about it, last week we saw Baffert put Getaway Car in Sunland Derby. That's a 20-point race. Okay, that's fine. Now we're putting Madaket Road in the Arkansas Derby in a 50-point race. To me, that tells you a little bit about his opinion of Madaket Road. He doesn't ship horses that he's not kind of high on into Arkansas very often. So he must think a fair amount of this horse to put this one on the kind of the 50-point trail, because if you kind of had him ranked the other way around, maybe Getaway Car's the one coming out here, things like that. So interesting to see for sure. Those are the 2 big races this weekend at Oaklawn. But listen, we got action in Florence, Kentucky on the synthetic as well. And listen, we're going to talk a little bit about this race, the Cincinnati Trophy, going a mile for the 3-year-old fillies. I should have that designation up there. And this race is on Friday, so make sure to make note of that. 12-horse field with an also eligible Wondrous. And your morning line favorite is the number 8, Girl Math. Kaylie, I defer to you on some of this stuff, but she does look pretty tough to beat, coming off of a victory over the surface last time out.
Yeah, she looks pretty tough to beat. Ever since she switched to the synthetic, she's improved a lot. She was always a horse that was just there running second, like constantly, to some pretty good horses on the dirt. So,
Yeah.
She switched to the synthetic and she was able to break her maiden, and it makes a lot of sense. The Dam was a great sprinter on the synthetic. Ran second in the grade 2 Raven Run, 91 buyer there. She has a half sibling that improved when switching and continuing on the synthetic as well, running 93 buyer and synthetic route at Woodbine. So the pedigree, suggests that the horse can continue to improve on the synthetic, and Pratt's riding this one as well. So I think, this one's going to be pretty tough to beat. I also, was looking a little bit at the number 6 for Brendan Walsh. I thought that this one, was running against some tough company on the turf, and then tried the synthetic up at Woodbine in a grade 3, and she won. And it wasn't, that fast of a pace that she closed into either. So, with the fast pace expected here, maybe, she runs even better, improves a little bit off of that. And she beat a couple of runners that are in here in that race as well. So, and also the 2 that finished behind her there came back to win the next time out. So I'm not too concerned with her. She's switching back off the Lasix, but she broke her maiden going longer on the turf without Lasix. So, and, Brendan Walsh is 10 for 49 at this Turfway meet, winning 20% of the races. So she's also cutting back to a mile. So she should be pretty sharp coming in here off of a layoff, and I think she can find a nice spot to kind of track the pace off the leaders. So I thought that was maybe an alternative to your morning line favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's interesting. The off Lasix thing is a question for a couple of horses. I think you could look at a horse like White Rocks, the number 4 at 8-1 for Arnaud Delacour, Victor Carrasco up on the mount. And this one's coming off a gate to wire victory last time out. Though I would caution people, look at the fractions. 25 to the opening quarter, 50 to the opening half, 115 to the opening three quarters. Ain't going to get those fractions. Now, the horse did show she can pass horses in that debut where she finished third. To another horse that's actually coming off Lasix as well, that's on the further outside, which is number 10, Admit, for Tom Drury Jr., 5-1 on the morning line. This one's coming off beating winners last time out in a $62,000 optional claimer, but is switching off Lasix. Notable that she recorded a significantly better buyer speed figure that last time out on Lasix. So switching off, we'll just have to wait and see. But Drury Jr. is a very high percentage trainer at Turfway Park, winning 32% of his entries. And a horse that I'm a little intrigued by is obviously a little further outside, the number 11 Pressure. And that's one for trainer Will Walden with Luan Machado up on the mount, coming off a little bit of a layoff, but has never tried synthetic before, has been working out over the surface, and has run against some good company. And interestingly enough, has broke its maiden only victory was actually on the dirt at Horseshoe Indianapolis, but has run well on the turf, nearly won the Tepin a couple of races last time out back in November against Laura Lynn and 5G, who we just talked about a second ago. So interesting if that horse could make a transition to the synthetic, sired by Omaha Beach. But this is going to be it's going to be a fun race. And, this Turfway circuit's always a lot of fun to follow every single year.
Yeah, definitely. I thought that pre-show could be a pretty live long shot, one that kind of interested me as well. So I think that this is another one that's kind of a wide open betting race. Maybe you can get some prices in here. Definitely, yeah, girl math might be tough to get around, but I could see it setting up for someone else in here for sure.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the John Battaglia Memorial, which is on Saturday. And this one is another 12-horse field with 2 also eligibles, Special Caliber and Maitre D. And you look at this one, and your morning line favorite is the number 9 First Resort. And this is a horse that is coming off an impressive effort, winning the Kentucky Jockey Club, which is a 2-turn race at Churchill Downs. We have seen success with horses transitioning from Churchill to the synthetic and vice versa. That they tend to run well on this all-weather surface at Turfway Park, and that translates over to the dirt at Churchill Downs. So First Resort's already passed the Churchill Downs test, now is going to be running on the synthetic. And this is one for trainer Owen Hardy, who, of course, has another horse, Poster, who's been on the Derby Trail. But you'd imagine this one looks pretty fit, fired off a 59 and 2 bullet last time, or 2 back in terms of workouts on February 10th, then just had a maintenance work. Luis Saez stays up on the mount for a horse that generally likes to track the early pace. There is some speed in this race, but maybe not quite as much as you might think. 2-1 on the morning line. You and I have the same top 3 actually, but just in a slightly different order for this one. I ultimately really like First Resort in this race, but you like a maximum security horse on the far outside, who I admit I took a very long look at before putting second in my top 4.
Yeah, and just to go back to the First Resort thing, he should like the synthetic. I mean, the dam is super versatile. She broke her maiden on the synthetic in her second start with an 88 buyer. And then she went to the turf, then the dirt. So that was a super versatile dam, and this is her first full. So, and has that route influence as well from Uncle Mo. So I think that, maybe this First Resort could really take to the synthetic here. I did put him second because I thought that this could be a wide open betting race. And I knew I wanted to take Maximum Promise out of the Lecomte. He had a really rough trip in his first time trying 2 turns in the slop. He made up a ton of ground there to finish 5th. I mean, he only lost by 2.5 lengths. So he's a versatile runner who's on the lead in his maiden breaking race, set his own pace and pulled away to win, I think, by like 14 lengths. And then 2 out of 5 of the other runners in there broke their maiden next time out, which is good to see. And then he came from way behind in the Lecomte to almost get there. So I think maybe if this horse sits a little bit closer here, maybe like mid-pack, he could sit a really nice trip. And he's a nice price on the morning line, has some upside trying synthetic for the first time. And the female family is turf, and he ran decently on the turf on debut as well. So thought, pretty interested to see how he takes to it. But Kenny McPeak going from dirt to synthetic, 13 for 74, 18% win rate. So I think that this might be a little sneaky one at a price. And I loved how he looked in the Lecomte. So I think he can be dangerous.
I hear you on that. And I'll go back to something on First Resort very quickly, which is not only did the Dam win on the synthetic, the Grand Dam actually was a 2-time synthetic winner going 1.5 miles. So there's plenty of, routing influence and distant influence and synthetic influence on the female side of that family. But with regards to Maximum Promise, one of the points that I'll make, and I made it in my analysis that's written up on NYRA Bets that you can get, is what we've seen come out of the Lecomte. Magnitude finished 6th in that Lecomte, comes back and runs a 108 buyer speed figure in the Risen Star. Built, who finishes 2nd in the Lecomte and earns a 77 buyer speed figure, comes back in the Risen Star and runs a 92. Why is that significant? Because Built ran a 92 in the Gun Runner, the race before the Lecomte. The Lecomte, I have a feeling, is going to end up being a race that is a little bit of an asterisk from a buyer speed figure perspective. It was a slowing, sloppy track that day. I think those numbers are going to be artificially low, and I think we're going to see horses come back out of that race running back to their previous form or better than that. And so the fact that we've already seen 2 horses do that is promising to me for a horse like Maximum Promise, who you mentioned had a bad trip. Now, I think if you just look at speed figures, you might go, well, the horse needs to get faster. I think there's every indication the horse will get faster. I think this one makes a lot of sense at 8-1. Definitely like this. And then listen, you can call us homers for our third pick. We like a New York bred calling card who is sired by Complexity for Mike Maker at 10-1 on the morning line. We both have this horse third. And I don't know, this horse, when I was going through it, the horse started on the turf, went to dirt, freaked on the dirt, ran an 87 buyer, won by 17.25 lengths. Then goes and faces a horse like Sandman at Oaklawn, and then last time out has to deal with that sloppy, slow track in the Lecomte. I think there's every reason this horse can step forward on the synthetic at 10-1.
And what's interesting is I think that they actually started this horse working him on the synthetic, like before he even debuted. So maybe that was the original intention there. Not sure. But all I know is that the complexities are really loving the synthetic. I guess it makes a decent amount of sense. He's sired by McLean's Music, and McLean's Music is a versatile sire as well. So yeah, but I remember going and seeing Complexity at Airdrie and talking to them about how they're super, that he's had a lot of success with synthetic runners up in, I think, at Woodbine, somewhere else maybe. And he actually has the highest win percentage in synthetic sprints right now than any other surface with his progeny, 21%. And the all sires average is 13%. I mean, I know they're not sprinting here, but I just think that that's super interesting. And I didn't think that this horse had the easiest trip in a couple of races, and with the talent that he's shown trying something new for the first time, I think that he's pretty interesting, and just put in a bullet work on February 8th as well. And that was faster than what he worked before the Lecomte. So
Yeah, I agree. And listen, Mike Maker, 23% at Turfway Park. He knows how to spot him. Gets Gerardo Corrales up on the mount. Gerardo, veteran of Turfway Park, knows how to ride these horses and knows how to get speed out of horses sometimes. So definitely a lot to like there with calling card. And then listen, in the last spot, you put a horse that I'm surprised you put this horse third because I remember it's a horse we both really like, Studley Do Right, who's a Maryland bred. He is cross-entered in a stakes race on Saturday at Laurel Park, where he is the 8-5 morning line favorite. So it'll be interesting to see what trainer John Robb does. One of the things Studley Do Right that you mentioned when the last time we were in the paddock at Aqueduct when we saw this horse run was he hasn't really gotten bigger from 2 years old, but he does have the back class that some of these other horses might lack.
Yeah, and this is a horse that's really just all over the place in terms of, his form, but I kind of like that he's trying something new for the first, trying
Yeah.
something new here. Maybe, the light bulb goes off or he really takes to it. Clearly, they're putting him here for a reason. So I put him forth just based on, the talent that he's shown. He's run figures that are, like you said, good enough to be really competitive here. And I think, trying synthetic for the first time could be interesting. Nyquist, his progeny wins 17% of synthetic routes, and the only sibling to race didn't really do much, ran better on the turf. Like that this one has 2-turn experience. The dam herself tried synthetic, ended up switching to the turf. So there's, a little bit of pedigree to go based off of too. And interesting enough, I think, to put in fourth at that price
Yeah,
too.
it's certainly a horse I yeah, certainly a horse I will be rooting for because I've always been a fan of this one. I like my Maryland breds, having spent a lot of time at Laurel Park and Pimlico growing up. So I ultimately put a horse, Baby Max, in my fourth position. This horse is coming off an absolutely perfect trip last time out. And I don't know if this horse can replicate that. That said, the horse showed really good improvement from the first time on synthetic to the second time. If this horse can move forward again in a similar vein, then there's absolutely an opportunity there. This one won a stakes race going a mile, so can handle the 2 turns at Turfway Park. Kelsey Danner, trusted trainer there. Abel Cedillo up on the mount. The connections stay the same. And what I like about this one is sat a tracking trip last time that, like I said, was perfect. You go back and look at that effort, 2 back and even 3 back. This horse can pass horses. This horse can come from off the pace and make up ground. So this is not a one-trick pony. I don't know if this horse gets quite the right setup in this race and maybe doesn't get quite the same sort of trip got last time in the Leonidas. So for that reason, I could see this one kind of making a run late, but there's going to be a big class difference between who this horse has faced to this point and who this horse is facing on Saturday. So, that's why I have this horse a little bit more underneath, but it's 6-1, not a bad horse to include in your vertical wagers. Well, that's going to do it for us on this road to the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks. Kaylie, it's going to be exciting, and we're going to be back on Monday to talk about all these races.
Super excited for our morning catch up on Monday to go over all the races. And I'm really excited. Obviously, hopefully, we're right about these races, but I'm very excited just to watch them. Like the Honeybee, I think that it's going to be a great race. I mean, all of them are. So, really excited for Sunday, Saturday,
Yeah.
Sunday, Friday. So, it should be a really good weekend.
Yeah, every day. No, it's a great point you make, and it's something that I'll just kind of end on, which is to say, I remember last year, I remember that last round of preps, the 100-point preps. A lot of people said, they wrote to me because I think I hit 3 or 4 of them. I think I got the right winners in 3 or 4 of the final round of preps. I don't know. I wasn't particularly good leading up to that. But to your point, a lot of this, even these 50-point prep races, you're still figuring stuff out about these horses. And it's really helpful just to watch sometimes. Yes, we love betting, and we're going to be betting. We're both going to be firing away on Saturday and Sunday. But you learn something every single time. And by just watching these races, you're setting yourself up to make better bets in the 100-point prep races that come after this. Because if it wasn't for me watching the Risen Star and really liking a horse, coming out of that race with a tough trip, I wouldn't have cashed in the Louisiana Derby. Those are the sorts of things you have to pay attention to. And so just watching these races, even if you don't win, which we hope we do, it's going to set you up and help you win the next time out. We got some great Kentucky Derby bankroll builder promos coming up for those 100-point Derby prep races as well. So listen, Kaylie, thanks so much. Look forward to joining you on Monday to recap these. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Road to the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks. For Kaylie Shapiro, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the races and reminding you, friends, it's now post time.